Since biblical times, man has witnessed and recorded strange manifestations in the sky and speculated on the possibilities of visitors from another world.
Hey, watch out for that pothole!
Today, from the skies of California, the fields of Kansas, the rice paddies of the Orient, the air lanes of the world, come persistent reports of corrupt politicians, which we have come to know as complete idiots. In Dayton, Ohio, the Air Intelligence Command gathers and sifts data from all quarters of the globe. 97% of the people prove one investigation to be of narcissistic origin, while 3% still are listed as unknown. The Air Force is aware that the widely held belief is that some of these could be aliens from another planet. Venture with us as we explore this strange phenomenon. Meet John, a man so named because his parents were as creative as a pile of rocks. Also meet Barbara from England, who is as hot as it gets, but has no talent in acting. Also, Saya from Japan, posing without clothes with Barbara in at least one scene if we don't get this banned. And there is, of course, Timmy, the boy the producers insisted on having in the show because he is the son of one of the financial backers. See the strange new worlds, new life, new adventures. See our world as we know it, only to be destroyed at the hands of corrupt politicians. To boldly go into the shower room with Barbara and Saya. Experience all the crap the Matrix has to offer. See the invasion of the Borg Blob today.
Ah, Hollywood. It used to be a lot of fun. It used to be back in the 60s and the 70s, 80s, and even the 50s. And you could, of course, argue even before that. Hollywood used to make movies that were entertaining enough to want to see over and over again. And it always seemed that Hollywood was making these movies in order to give humanity a hint of what might come down the line sometime in the future, or what other timelines in the universe we're experiencing. It's either that or the angels who run the Matrix were testing various kinds of scenarios to see what kind of reactions they would get from humanity. This was particularly true for science fiction and horror movies, as I'll explain as we go through this video. Of course, the list here is very incomplete. There are many other movies that are definitely worth mentioning, just don't have the space and time for it. And of course, it wasn't just science fiction and horror movies. It was like everyone's life during that time were experiencing their own lessons, their own movies within the Matrix. And as for the non-science fiction movies, Hollywood seemed to be putting out movies that had to do with people's daily lives, the little quirky things that we used to have back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s that seemed to be almost completely void in the timeline that we're in now. It seems to be more that Hollywood is just creating, and media in general, is just creating things for the narcissistic needs of a bunch of crappy people. Now, we'll get into that more later, but let's take a look at the 60s a bit more and see how it compares today. Anyone who was born before the 1980s will remember the time when life was a lot freer and a lot more fun, albeit naive and simple at times. It had a lot of things that made life worth living for. So what happened? What changed? Well, that's what I'm going to explore in this video. In the 1990s, there was a big shift away from these more natural connections to our planet and more towards technology that seems to utterly frazzle the minds of many people, especially if you work in the education system and have been around since the 1960s or even earlier. You will notice that much of what you see today is nothing like it was in the past. Technology really has caused a lot of major issues with the psyche of humanity. And of course, this was done on purpose. So I'm going to take a look at the 1960s first a little bit, and then we'll go into what changed in the 1990s that's causing many of the problems we see today. In the 1960s, you had a mother that cooked great food, or your grandmother. Education was okay, wasn't great, but it wasn't so bad. It was something you could get through. When you had time off playing with your friends, you were playing with your bike. You were taking walks outside in the woods, exploring the woods. You could see kids playing in the park, outside, laughing and giggling. As you got older, you even went skinny dipping with your friends in the local lake. And you had Saturday morning cartoons to take the stress off of the entire week. It was a lot of fun. The technology at the time was limited to TV, radio, record players, typewriters. Fast food was actually relatively healthy at the time. Restaurants that you went to were cozy, had atmosphere, had quaintness to it. So what happened? Well, there are three technology in my experience that altered all of that. TV games, cell phones, and of course computers.
I see how it works now. Can we try it again?
Now we have these energy-sucking vampiric technology that just bleeds or disrupts the psyche of the human being at this time. The LED lights, the plastics in our food, medicine that causes more harm than good, living conditions that, let's just say, are less than ideal. There are even rumors of people being able to detect who got a certain injection at one point in time and are buried in the graveyards because they actually pick up a signal from their deceased bodies. So if this is the direction humanity is going, I think you might want to know who's in charge of that. Well, it was these guys, the angels, and not just the angels, but other beings related to them, including Satan and other corrupt beings throughout the universe. But the story goes is that the original struggle of humanity to come into the Matrix was to experience the good versus evil game. However, this time around the angels have gone a little bit too far. It used to be that they would only have Satan, demons, corrupt angels, the moralistic angels, and the good angels that would try to balance out humanity to see which side that they would take. Those who took the side of evil ended up in the inferno somewhere. Those who did not went back to heaven, etc., etc. However, this time around, like all other great catastrophes throughout history, the Tartarian civilization, Atlantis, etc., etc., this time around they went too far because they not only incorporated demons and Satan, but they also started using the technology from aliens, the gray aliens in particular. And this is making it very difficult for people to combat. They've been duped by these beings, in my opinion. They are not your friends. If anyone wanted to go into another video about angels themselves, I'd be happy to do so. These are a group of beings that have very little to do with humanity, except they got in charge of the Matrix for the past, well, several thousands of timelines, or years, depending upon how you look at it. And they are the ones that made up all the rules for them, but they break their own rules. They go too far. And there's a lot of lies within the Matrix that have nothing to do with what's really going on the other side. And again, that would be another video. In any case, anybody who came in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s loved to be here. It was fun to be here. Sure, there were problems, struggles to go through, but it wasn't as heavy as it is now. There was culture. There was outlets that you could have. People were not so divided as they are now. And what the angels had done is, like they have in the past, they have bribed corrupt people in positions of power, to use this technology to control humanity in order to enslave them. If you need proof, there's plastic everywhere, your food is poisoned, the injections that they're giving out are more destructive than the actual viruses they're supposed to protect you from. You have all these electronics going off everywhere. The airwaves are stuffed with Wi-Fi. And people started noticing some quirks in the Matrix. One of the most well-known ones is, of course, the Mandela effect, where you have things like the Fruit of the Loom logo having the Capricorn and not having the Capricorn. The Monopoly guy having a monocle and not having a monocle. And many, 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 many others. Around the 1990s, you had the beginning of the notion to have computers interact with children, and by the year 2000 you had these robots that interact with children. And again, where is that going to lead to when they start replacing body parts with robotics to actually create cyborgs so people can stay in the Matrix longer? Is that what you really want? Of course, what it's given us is a bunch of screaming brats within the Matrix. Either that or these complete narcissistic clone souls or NPCs. Probably are not really that human. Either way, we have created a society of complete narcissistic beings. Either that or they're completely, totally zombified by the electronics that they use. And I felt the energy that comes from these electronics. Again, technology itself is not evil, but it's how it's used. The energy that they use can make it evil. And the so-called deep state of this world has seemed to have been heading in that direction. Now, will it end up that way? Well, probably not. In the end, it will probably collapse. All cults, including the Borg-like cults, will collapse. And the main reason is because if they don't have energy to feed off of, they rot. And once they rot, they self-collapse. So the name of the game for these beings is just survival. They can't quit their corrupt ways because they would immediately collapse. In the future, I'm going to be making videos on different timelines on how people interact with each other outside of the Matrix. It's much more interesting. Our ancestors practiced very, very different games than you see in the Matrix. In the Matrix, everything in the Matrix is the opposite of what is on the other side. And it's intentionally done that. That's for the good versus evil game. But again, the angels kind of went too far this time. And they have really duped humanity into a direction I don't think most people want to go into. I think a lot of people would like to have a reset and go back to the 1960s or 70s where you had these annoying phones for sure and LP records and all these other technologies, but it was much more interesting then than the music or the entertainment you see now. Be aware of technology and the people who misuse it. Most of them are the narcissistic egotists who have sold out to the angels in order to get a privileged life over other people, to control other people, to feed off of them. There are several movies that I would suggest you look at that sort of emphasize that point. One is the movie called Society from the 1980s. Another would be They Live. There are many, many other, of course, but these are two that really closely align to what I see in the Matrix at this time. And of all the things that I've encountered, demons, Satan, all of the things, the worst thing I have ever encountered is the Borg Blob. The Borg Blob is a collection of all the dark angels, Satan, the humans who surrendered their will to this crap of the Matrix, who will succumb to, who no longer can love, who no longer can be, who can no longer generate. They can only feed off of other people. Once that is disconnected from the rest of humanity, they will rot and collapse. And the Borg Blob will cease to exist, but it will continue to function as long as the angels keep it together. And there's supposedly that's going to end. What the angels are supposedly doing is collecting all the souls that they believe can no longer spiritually move forward, can no longer move on from the good versus evil game, only want their selfish needs met. And when that happens, those souls will be collected and thrown possibly into another matrix, possibly destroyed outright. It's hard to say exactly what will happen, but I have seen and can remember some very nightmarish scenarios for them. The rest of humanity will be released from it and go back to probably something similar to the 1960s and 70s with a different timeline, but with the same technology we have today, just not misused the way it is. I guess we will see. Another scenario is that we might go back to nature and connected to nature and stuff, where humanity really does excel. So the best thing to do for me now, in order to explain how you can move on from this timeline and enjoy other timelines that I'm working with other people at this timeline, I know that sounds very confusing, is to show you some of those timelines and the joys and the fun without the darkness of the Matrix, Satan and the moralistic angels and the other angels that play against humanity, the deception against humanity. And those are a lot more fun. As always, I'll be putting out videos on auras and less about near-death experiences. Since there seems to be so many of those videos out now, I think it would be more interesting to the listeners of this channel on how auras work, how you can use your aura to improve yourself, and how to move on to the Matrix, the more fun-loving games that wait the transition. If you have any questions about how the moralistic angels work, how Satan works, how to leave the Matrix so you can enjoy the transition, please leave a comment in the section below, and thanks again for watching.